Okay, now we're going to interview Alejandro Saab, and we'll get started. Who would like to ask the first question? Mr. Q, you want to be first?
Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you. All right, talking to the mic. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Most of the questions I asked you from last time I interviewed you, so something new is, what character would you like to voice if you could?
What character would I like to voice if I could? I don't know if there's a specific character, but I would say I would love to be a part of like Genshin Impact or Yu-Gi-Oh! Because I grew up with Yu-Gi-Oh! And it's one of the few things I haven't had a chance to be a part of yet. So.
So, Alex?
Hey, so out of all the things you've done so far, what would you say is your favorite voiceover gig?
My favorite voiceover gig is the one I can't talk about yet. No. In all seriousness, man, it's tough because there's so many, and I know that everybody is like, I can't choose. It's my favorite. Like, they're all my children. There are just some that it's like, I think it depends like how I'm feeling that day. Like when it comes to comedies, my favorite is the show I worked on, Sleepy Princess and the Demon Castle. Yes. I voiced Twilight, and he's so ridiculous, and we had so much fun with that show. But when it comes to like what connects closest to me, there are like two shows. There's one called Horimiya, where I voiced Miyamura, and then there's this other one, which is a little more obscure that I don't know if too many people know. It's called Sarazanmai, where I voiced Katsuki, and both were just like realms where like folks don't usually put me in, because normally it's like, oh, that guy's the funny guy. He's the funny guy, and I'm like, sure. But both those like touch upon like very sad parts of people's lives that they can't do. So like, you know, like just like finding acceptance, and it's just I don't know. It just, I connected with that more than anything else. And I mean, then there's all the nostalgic stuff that I grew up with, being a part of like Dragon Ball and like Saint Seiya. So it is hard to say favorites, but I feel like it's, for me, it's like saying what's my favorite movie, and I'll be like, okay, cool, but like comedy, like action, like I always categorize it. So, yeah.
Since Mr. Mason is not here, I would like to ask this question in his behalf, which is, what advice do you have for people who would like to be voice actors?
The advice that I would give folks starting out in voiceover or wanting to get into it is that, I mean, everybody swears that it's more about the voice. I would say it's more about the acting than anything else. But also, don't be afraid to play, because one of my teachers and friends, his name is Richard Horvitz, he always taught me, it's like, voice acting is like playing pretend, you know? And when you're a kid, you're not like, you're not thinking every single line that you're doing, you're just having fun and playing pretend. So, yeah, just have fun.
Play pretend. I got it. Next question? Which one? Do I go, Mr. Rock? Or go ahead, Mr. Q.
Yeah.
I asked you before, but since everybody's here new, what's your big three for anime?
My big three for anime. Number one is Full Metal Alchemist. I put both OG and Brotherhood as like one unit. The number 2 and 3, I feel like it's constantly changing. But Bakano, I think for me, is definitely one of them. And yeah, and then it constantly alternates. Like I've said Steins Gate, I've said Code Geass. Yeah, that one's tough. I can give you number 1. I can always give you number 1, and that's always Full Metal. Hasn't changed in like a decade.
I know you have like, you know, online ventures, so I wanted to ask you, like, how would you describe like Caggy Films?
Caggy Films, when I first started it, was pretty much just me being a kid, just trying to do whatever I liked, whether it be like making video game commentaries, reactions, like, you know, dubbing over stuff, just honestly finding out what I wanted to do as a kid. And then eventually it became kind of like what funded my voiceover career, because I moved out, like I dropped out of college and then I moved out to Texas, but the only reason I did that is because I had Caggy Films. So if I didn't have Caggy Films, I wouldn't have a voiceover career, because I wouldn't have the funds to, because everyone's always like, oh, you have to have a 9 to 5 or like another job to support you, which is true. Thankfully for me, I had my own schedule to it, and I still do it from time to time, but I don't necessarily need it. Now I just kind of do it for fun, whenever. So, yeah.
Any other questions? Yes.
Another question. Like, over your 10 years plus making content on the internet, when you take a look back at everything that led to where you are now, what is your feeling in regards to everything that you've accomplished thus far?
Out of the 10 years of making content and everything I've done, I really resonate with the Hamilton song where they talk about you'll never be satisfied, because I feel like I'll never be satisfied, and that's why I keep thriving for more. Because like, I remember when I booked Dragon Ball Legends, a buddy of mine who he just asked me, it's like, do you feel like you've made it? Do you think like you've peaked? And I was like, man, I hope not. Because if anything, this is the beginning, and I feel like it was, because like since then it's thankfully been going uphill. But I just enjoy doing what I do, so I don't think I'll ever be satisfied. I'll always yeah.
You have a favorite line from one of your voiceover work you've done?
A favorite line from my favorite voiceover. Well, again, it's like categorizing it. So when it comes to comedies, one of my favorite lines is we got to reference Metal Gear. And mind you, I've never played Metal Gear in my life, and I really want to change that. But it's the meme. It's like, why are we here? Just to suffer. We managed to sneak that into Sleepy Princess in the Demon Castle. They're in this carnival essentially. And me as the Demon King, I'm just like, why are we still here? Just to suffer! And it was just ridiculous. But when it comes to like, one of the most memorable moments was for Fire Emblem Three Houses, I voiced Yuri. And in the game at some point, spoilers, sorry if no one hasn't played it, but the main character's father passes away. And if you can interact with the different like companions and all the students and stuff, and they each give you like different lines or advice. And Yuri, my character, when I was saying the lines, my friend's dad passed away, and when I was doing that line, I was thinking about them because it was very hard to convey what to say to them. So I was like, hey, I know this is out of nowhere, but like, just watch this clip because this was for you. So. Yeah, that is one of my favorite things.
So speaking of video games, I know you haven't played Metal Gear, but what are some video games that you enjoy?
All right, let me tell you. So my favorite game of all time, and I will preach this game to death, is Psychonauts. Now Psychonauts 1 and 2. I can't put one over the other. But the game is all about the human mind. Okay. It's about this boy named Rasputin, funny enough, voiced by Richard Horvitz, who's my teacher, and he didn't know that at the time. And he's a carny. Like he's a kid who would worked at the carnival. Like his family was a bunch of carnies, and he wanted to be a psychic. And in this world, there is a place known as Whispering Rock, and that's where they teach kids to become psychics. And essentially the FBI of that world, they're psychonauts. They're the psychic agents to help stop like the evil of the world. And this kid, his family hates psychics. So you have like 24 hours before they take you away from the camp to get all your merit badges and learn every single psychic move. And you go into the different minds of different people, and it's really cool. And one of my favorites is you go into the mind of a actor who's distraught because they've lost their muse. But in the game, the muse is an actual person. And they're just sad. It's like, can't you tell I'm depressed? And one of my favorite moments of that, when I was a kid playing it, there's this guy who's just mean and ridiculing, and he's like, I'm a critic! And I'm like, man, that guy sucks. Yeah. But then as I got older and I played it again, because I try to play that game every year because I find something new every time, I thought about it and I'm like, oh, That's in your mind. That's an internal critic. No wonder he's so ruthless. Because we're our own worst critics. Man, this game is so clever. And then Psychonauts 2 came out 15 years later, and it's more of that, but instead of, it focused more on the different types of depression. And I was like, wow, it kind of grew up with the players who played the original. And I really resonate with that game. It's so cool diving into the human mind. Other than that, Persona. I love Persona.
So do my sons. They also really like Metal Gear, by the way. So I have time for one more question? You guys have one more question?
You have anything that you have coming up that you can tell us about?
That I can tell you about. I got a phone call the other day for a thing I can't talk about, but I'm really excited. Things I can talk about. Things I can talk about. That is tough. Most of the things that are coming up are super hush, unfortunately. I mean, most recently, I got to announce I voice Mugino and Boruto, which was really cool, because I'm a longtime Naruto fan. So, other than that, I mean, yeah, everything is super NDA, unfortunately. I mean, if you wait a couple of years, maybe like Demon Slayer, my character ends up being important. Don't look him up. It is such huge spoilers. Don't look up Kaigaku. I promise you, you're gonna be mad.
Oh.
But just keep an eye out because I can't wait how that's gonna look in the anime. But yeah.